Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. It's January, brand new year, and for many people out there, we're looking to take that step forward for a brand new you. After all, our past does not equal our future. Yet most of us hold on to outdated negative beliefs and self-critical thoughts that sabotage our success and happiness. But today we're going to learn how we can use neuro-linguistic program techniques that can powerfully anchor renewed feelings of confidence, overpowering the negative, self-critical thinking which so often occurs when we're under stress in our daily lives. Our guest today is going to demonstrate a very powerful yet simple technique called Learn How to Fire Your Inner Critic, which has brought greater confidence and peace of mind to so many. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, who is a neuro-linguistic program practitioner as well as an intuitive coach and licensed hypnotherapist. She does her work at Inner Pathway Hypnosis in Portland, Oregon. I'd like to welcome Katie Ramseur to the Beyond 50 radio program. Katie, thank you for joining us today.
Well, hi. Nice to talk to you. Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. Now, the topic of your talk today focuses on learning how to fire your inner critic. Now, some people live their entire lives with an inner critic. How does hypnosis help one overcome this challenge?
Well, one way of describing hypnosis, which I really like to use, is an expression that's saying that, instead of changing who you are, think of hypnosis as removing the blocks that get in the way of who you are. And in that respect, it allows you to kind of realize that, we have certain aspects of ourself which don't always serve our best and highest interests. And once we can kind of clear those away, there's a vision ahead that allows us to really move forward much more quickly, be much more creative, much more confident, even learn how to communicate better with people that we work with. And one of the things that I probably want to do is give you a little background on just about the conscious versus the subconscious mind. I know we all are pretty comfortable with the idea that you have a part of your brain that loves to analyze and loves to plan and execute things, learn languages, and that is the conscious mind, which is really your left lobe of your brain. The right lobe is the subconscious mind, what we call the subconscious mind, and that's where we store all of our emotions, all our memories, and our imagination and our creativity. And because as children, we're obviously being taught behaviors by authorities like parents, relatives, and, sometimes those parents won't always give us the most positive reinforcement. You might say, if you're in third grade and you're studying math, Johnny, you failed your math test. Johnny, I don't think you'll ever be very good at math. So that subconscious mind really is like a 3-year-old, and it will take in whatever it's been programmed into and kind of store it just as that. So Johnny goes forward, and 8 years later, he's in middle school or whatever, and he starts to believe that that's he's not ever going to be good at math. He won't get through the test. So that becomes a behavior, and we store those behaviors again in the subconscious. So what hypnosis does is helps you make those behaviors and beliefs reframed so that you don't carry them around like a bag of rocks on your back. All of a sudden you have a new way of perceiving yourself, allowing that to be, a behavior of, hey, I'm brilliant, I'm amazing, I can ace the test. And I have, many examples I can give you, of course not wanting to take up too much time, but those are the main aspects of the two parts of the brain. And to be honest with you, the subconscious mind is operating 95% of everything we do. Not only just the fact that we blink and move our arms, without thinking about it, but really the conscious mind is really in charge about 5% of the time.
Wow, I didn't realize there was so much to it. Pretty amazing stuff there.
It really is, and I like to just take a second and segue into an amazing cell biologist named Dr. Bruce Lipton, who several years ago wrote a book called The Biology of Belief, and he's a brilliant scientist, and he really has bridged the world of science with the world of sort of neurology and the kind of changes that hypnosis and other alternative therapies really bring to bear with helping change behavior and also helping people, create new holistic strategies for their life. And one of the things that he discusses is a great example, really, of stress. And so imagine, Olympic athletes and the get ready, get set, go command. So the get ready command, they're putting their feet on the blocks and they're getting in position. Get set is, okay, now the nerves are really getting fired up. They're absolutely poised for that next step, which is the go and the firing of the pistol or whatever it is. And off they go. So what happens in life if you've done the get ready and you've done the get set, but all of a sudden the shot doesn't fire? And that's part of what we're living with in today's world. We're living under the umbrella of terrorism, possible huge climate changes, earthquakes, floods, all these different things, and our reptilian brain is thinking, we're under a threat, but the threat hasn't happened, and we don't know when the threat will happen. Therefore, we must be on constant low-level alert, if you can understand my point. And that causes a low level of stress that's ongoing. And for a lot of people, that is very true. So to help them be able to shift and realize, no, you have more control over your life than you think. Because stress really is the operative belief system underneath stress is, I'm out of control, or I don't have enough control to help me feel relaxed.
Now, first of all, for our listeners, Katie, why don't we have you describe what neuro-linguistic programming is and why it's so effective at changing one's behavior and outlook?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's something that most people don't understand. I'm sure it's even the name is a little bit difficult for people to get their hands around. NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, was created by a master psychologist, hypnotist named Dr. Milton Erickson, along with two men, Richard Bandler and I'm not sure, Mr. Grinder. They were brilliant computer programmers and linguists. And basically, NLP helps you understand how you perceive the world and how you interpret the signals from the world so that you can make sense out of it. Now that's a big jumble of words. Let's take myself for example. I'm a visual person, but I also like to learn by doing. So when I learn a new process, I store pictures that help me remember those things. I also will practice something, and by doing it, I'll remember just from my muscle memory or kinesthetically how to do something. Somebody else who may be a musician, for example, learns by listening to sounds, listening to the words, listening to the voice tones of people. So we all learn and gather knowledge in different ways. And so NLP helps you understand how your body interprets these signals, and it's many different processes, that we use and that I use with my clients that helps them be able to really access actual ways that they're feeling about something and access places where they're storing a lot of stress, for example. One of the processes that I'll use every so often with a client, which is called the multiple person perspective, will actually help people understand how other people see them. And since the conscious mind is really about self-awareness, so we're aware of who we are. We're aware that we're 12. We're aware that we're 60 or whatever. Self-awareness is absolutely a huge thing. But most of the time, we don't really know how others perceive us. We kind of all live in, we have a blind spot in that area. This NLP process actually helps you anchor into or access ways that others perceive you. And in that process, you'll find that you can begin to feel more compassion to certain people, allow your own behavior to change so that you become better at communicating with them. Let's see if there's something else that I need to say that might help. If you were in a meeting and your boss chewed you out in front of your team, your gut felt terrible, most likely you would have stored that feeling in your gut. You would have felt terrible, might have gone home with a headache or, had a really bad stomach. But regardless, you would have stored that emotion somewhere. So your body really is a map of where you've stored emotions. You store emotions of, the day you had your first child, emotions of getting married. Those are probably really, really positive emotions. But you also may have stored emotions somewhere else of having fallen off a horse, had a bad fall when you were younger, or having been in a bad car accident. So our bodies act as places where we anchor certain emotions and memories. And the memories aren't just up in our brain. Part of them live within our bodies themselves.
Wow, it's really incredible to think about things this way. And I was kind of curious, though, Katie, are there any findings in contemporary scientific research which substantiate the effectiveness of hypnotherapy and NLP along the subconscious mind?
Yes. Actually, glad you asked. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to because sometimes when we do talks like this, there might be let's call it a mind reset modality, for lack of a better, I guess, way to look at it.
Yeah.
And you see people, because we like to post our interviews on YouTube, and we get a lot of interaction from these things. It's really interesting. And there'll be people on there that, they come along and they always have to be skeptical, if not downright cynical, about things that they don't believe will really work. And my feeling is, well, that's because you really don't want to change. I think you can make anything work if you just really make an effort to do it. It's really about you making that effort. But anyway, that being said, one of the things they love to hide behind is, well, I don't know if there's any scientific research. They need to have science convince them that perhaps this is going to work. So let's talk about that. Yeah,
that's a great point. And I'll point them also to biology of belief, because that will be, in one sense, kind of an overall view of how neurology and biology and hypnotherapy and, again, other modalities kind of meeting of the mind, so to speak. But let me give you a little bit of history, or at least the part where we really see where the rubber hits the road in America, for example. Back in the Civil War, when people needed operations and amputations and things like that, there were some big problems with anesthetics in those days. They didn't understand dosage at all. Consequently, some people who were getting operated on got too much. And
generally, it was just a jug of whiskey, wasn't it?
Well, we could think about that, or some sort of, not hydrochloric acid, but something, chloroform, I guess, is what, not it's something like that. And so, obviously, that was a big problem. Enter Dr. Henry Monroe, who was a doctor as well as a hypnotist. Actually more likely a dentist and a hypnotist. And he developed a process which we call hypnotic analgesia, where you really get someone very, very deeply relaxed, and you cause them to allow their jaw to feel numb. So at that point when that person actually achieves a state of numbness in the jaw, which might not be completely numb, but at least halfway numb. And I've experienced it myself, so I can attest to it. What he would do is then he would give them half the dosage that he normally would have, half the dosage of anesthetic, and everything went very smoothly. he ended up teaching. He had two students who were also extremely keen on this. Both of them were named Mayo, and they themselves, I believe, hypnotized about 3,000 patients in their time as they did dental work, and they ended up founding the Mayo Clinic. So that's a great endorsement for the effectiveness of hypnosis. And even today, in fact, the Journal of American Medical Association actually endorses hypnosis for pain management. Talks about acupuncture, hypnosis, and some other techniques, but actually acupuncture and hypnosis being the two most prominent medical techniques, alternative medical techniques. And I think that speaks very highly of the power of hypnosis. You see, we're very much involved with working with what's called the limbic system in the brain, and that would probably take a few minutes to really discuss at length, but briefly, this is where your nerve centers are located. It's where your centers for memory, balance, and other really important functions are being stored, such as temperature, etc. And hypnosis is excellent with working with the limbic system, and as a result, chronic pain responds very well to hypnosis because we're able to change the way the signals are flowing up and down the spine. To shorten it up, because actually the brain doesn't really understand chronic pain. It's a funny thing. And so we work with dimming that sensation of discomfort down to a point where a person could take something like, for example, a badly arthritic knee and have that knee begin to feel numb and lower that sensation to the point where they won't need medication. And that's a huge shift for them as well as for their quality of life and their sense of purpose. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that while just around the same time that Dr. Lipton was writing his book and doing his own experiments, another scientist, Dr. Candace Pert, P-E-R-T, who wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion, established that the quote-unquote mind doesn't really just reside in the head, which is what we've all pretty much presumed, to be the standard for a very long time. And she discovered what she called signal molecules that are distributed throughout the body. And so at that point, the mind uses the brain to generate what she called or referred to as molecules of emotion, which override the system. In other words, creating new thoughts, positive thoughts, thoughts of creativity, expansiveness, and many things like this. So we no longer need to think of the brain as all motion starts in the brain, ends in the brain. That's no longer true. And I think actually this is kind of a backup scientific proof of why NLP can be so helpful and so successful, because these emotional signal molecules are in these different places in the body where we have stored emotions and memory.
Interesting. I like what you're talking about, especially you've talked about Bruce Lipton and his seminal work, Biology of Belief. We've had him on the program, and it's really fascinating because I wished sometimes people who are out there talking about his work, and I don't mean you, but I mean from what I hear from other people, have actually would read his book so they can understand, and I can tell that you have because you're talking about cellular memory, which is what his book is a lot about, and somehow the New Age self-help community grabbed a hold of that and it became a way to manifest things.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's really it's very exciting to be able to refer to some scientific backing behind these different things, and one of them is just really understanding the reptilian, mammalian, and executive functioning brains, because we are, our reptilian brain is basically a pattern matching machine. If you, at some point in your life were out in the woods and a coyote started to chase you, you would remember the sounds of the coyote, the sounds of how your footsteps running. You'd pick up so many different things, and that pattern matching reptilian brain would, at any time in the future after that, if you heard a sound that was even remotely similar, your reptilian brain would fire off and you'd say, oops, I'm a little worried about a coyote being around here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, that makes a lot of sense, too.
Yeah. So,
and the beauty, too, I was going to add to that is that he was also talking about how, based on his research, that the idea of genetics being that precursor for things such as, let's say, cancer. Well, in my family, we've had a history of cancer, so therefore I'm predisposed to cancer, or it could be diabetes, whatever the case may be. Now, there's certain genetic traits we take on, but through his science and research, and there's another book out there also called Epigenetics, both of those prove that these are untrue. Now, you may characterize it by saying, well, if I follow the same patterns, there's a fair chance that I might get cancer. But just because it might have been had by a family member, somebody in your family line, doesn't necessarily mean that you will, because genetics, as he was showing in his book, has a way of morphing and changing, such as, for instance, if you live in Southern California for 15, 20 years, then you move up to, let's say, Portland, Oregon. Obviously, the temperature is going to be a lot cooler. You're going to put on sweaters for the first year or two or maybe 3, but if you're up here for at least 4 or 5 years, you're going to find yourself being able to shed those sweaters in temperatures you would have never been able to tolerate in Southern California. So that being said, at a cellular level, you can see how what you're describing with NLP and hypnotherapy, how it's very possible to change right now who you are and move forward to a different you.
Well, you made an excellent point, in fact, and backing that up, the body, I believe it's every 7 years your major muscles are replaced. All the cells in your major muscles are replaced, and I can't remember how often the minor muscles and other parts of our systems get replaced, but the bottom line is every 7 years you are not, you are a brand new you. You're not who you were. All your other cells have died off. They've been replaced. So hopefully they've duplicated themselves faithfully, and you look as you ought to look, but all the cells are new, and it's an amazing thing. The other thing is a concept of expectation, which is a huge principle in working with change, no matter what modality, because what you expect to happen will happen. That's kind of the probability of life, And so, as we know, unfortunately, if people with serious illnesses go see their doctor and they sit in front of the doctor and they say, Doc, how long do I have? Unfortunately, that pronouncement by that doctor at that moment could literally change their destiny. If the doctor said, well, I'm really not sure. I think you have a chance of being here for quite some time, without any numerical value of how many years. Just you might live, that's 50 years. Gosh, who knows? That person leaves that office with hope, but that doctor that says probably two years, maybe 6 months, and the person may unfortunately pass away within 6 months because expectation in their mind plays out as what they expect to happen will happen. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, I saw a video of a talk Dr. Lipton gave several years ago, and I saw on the screen how he would talk about living, demonstrations of how a person's neurochemicals or amino acids, based on a certain emotional state they were in at a certain time, had a certain structure, and as soon as that emotional state started to change, the structure immediately changed too. So, we do know that we're making very big changes when we're changing a person's stress or fear of something and helping them lower their stress, helping them, control their weight, helping them feel, as you were saying earlier, more empowered regarding their health, and releasing any idea that they'd ever get a serious illness. Why not just feel fantastic and vibrantly healthy every day of your life?
Exactly, and why not expect that from yourself as well?
Exactly.
And you were mentioning, I believe it was cancer, and it's funny because we had a gal out of, I believe it was Colorado, and she is now being well sought after in her cancer research, and she's showing some things like, what are these doctors doing out here, when it comes to cancer and the treatment of cancer. She says it needs to be changed. She says, it's come to a point where she says, I can grow cancer where it comes right out of the dish and crawls out all over the room, or I can make it just disappear. There's nothing really mysterious about what cancer is. But what she did say was this, and this is someone who does cancer research, full-blown doctor, treats people the whole bit. And what's interesting, because she seems to be bucking medical convention, which I think we need to do for a lot of things, is that she says people more often, really, a majority of people die from cancer because of the fact that they think that's a possibility. They're afraid of it. And just like what you're talking about here, it's what they believe. She says if they could just realize this is something that has a very strong possibility of not only being reversed, but even, for the most part, cured, that would change a lot of dynamics in how their treatment is and so forth. And so it's really interesting to look at it that way.
And just a quick, story on the tail of what you were saying is I had worked with a client a few years ago who had ovarian cancer. She was about to go into ovarian cancer surgery within a month after working with me. And so obviously I wanted to, and she was, in her 70s. So this woman traveled the world. She was a very curious person, very interested in life, and, a vibrant mind. So I said, well, talk to me about what would excite you the most. You are a traveler. If you could go anywhere, where would it be, and would get you so excited that you'd just be, exquisitely happy to be there? And she said, Tasmania, which is off the western coast of Australia. There's a beach there that she loved. And so in hypnosis, we really worked with her experiencing very right down to the cellular level, actually. The sheer joy she would have by being on that beach, the color of the water, the smell of the waves, of the sand, the presence of the flora and fauna there, everything stimulated her so much. And, she went through the surgery. Apparently it went well. I'm hoping she's still doing well. And it's those kinds of things which help change the whole perception of illness and powerlessness, because we all have immense ability to be so much more powerful physically as well as in every other area. And we live within a system that does not support that. So, yeah.
Now, Katie, from what we've been talking about, obviously the brain is a very complex organ. Now, when someone's feeling very self-critical and anxious, what exactly is happening in their brain as well as their body? Isn't it difficult to shut off the negativity?
Well, yeah, it is very, very hard. Again, that reptilian brain will keep somebody locked into the mode where they don't feel they can step out of it. They'll possibly have obsessive thoughts going over and over again. What is happening is, first of all, your adrenal glands are working overtime. Those are sitting right above your kidneys, down in the lower back. Those adrenal glands are putting out an awful lot of cortisol, and that's helping the person keep that person on high alert, so that the threat awareness is high. The neurochemicals that help you feel good, help you relax, dopamine, serotonin, things like that, those levels are lower at that point in time, because the person's not giving themselves time to relax. Extreme stress such as panic attacks, being in an accident, serious accident. What happens at that moment is the growth systems in the body are all being shut down or temporarily put on hold, so that the body can go into the mode of, giving as many physical resources as possible to help the person cope with the challenge that they have in front of them. So, of course, we want to, at all costs, if somebody's there on a site of a pretty bad accident, help a person not go into shock. And that's if it is possible to keep a person from going into shock through hypnosis, and it would obviously help the person's resources. They'd have more energy to work with healing themselves later on. But pretty much what we're really doing is being able to learn how to change the direction of those thoughts. That's part of what we're doing. We're also using other different processes like humor, believe it or not, can sometimes really be a way to divert some of that attention and over-focus on stress, and also helping reframe traumatic memories and experiences. And there's a few processes that I use to help work with people who have had PTSD, very, traumatic experiences where they keep playing those films over and over in their head. And what these processes do is pretty much neutralize that. I must say at this point in time, military PTSD is something that I don't work with. I might be able to at some point, but that's a very specific kind of PTSD, and so it has to be handled carefully.
Now, I'm curious, with the treatment of depression, would that differ from the treatment of severe anxiety or even obsessive thinking when using hypnosis?
Yes. I mean, depression is very complex because really what's happening in depression is that the brain, the person's so worried, so concerned, so upset that when they go to sleep, instead of being able to let that part of the brain shut down so that they can actually have REM sleep and dream, in which time in a normal person's life, through the dreaming process, you're releasing some of your, milder anxieties, your, if you had a problem with somebody at work, you could sort of work it out through your dreams. If you had a dream about wanting to create something, being creative, that might emerge. The dreams are incredibly helpful for us. I mean, we really can't survive without dreaming because it's an outlet for us on many levels. So what happens in the brain of a depressed person is they are over-dreaming. They're dreaming so much that they're not sleeping. So what we really try to do is help them relax the brain, help relax in a very kind of deeper level of just relaxing the brain, helping the brain really calm down so that at some point that person's actually going to be able to have a decent night's sleep. Other processes and things to do with people who are depressed, and part of that's social, helping them feel a sense of community, not isolating too much. Finding ways where they can be around. Maybe they could help somebody. Maybe they could be around a child that needs some help that makes them feel good. These are, there's a lot there. Obsessive compulsive disorder is hypnosis can definitely help. Some of the processes that I do is I will work to take somebody back to the first time they experienced something, first time they experienced a certain fear of something or something that caused them to be obsessed or even depressed for that matter, to get back to that root core incident, because that's where it all began, and help reframe that for them. That's a very powerful process. That even use that with drug addicts, actually.
Now, aside from the process that you're going to reveal, which is to learn how to fire our inner critic, what other approaches might be used to help someone feel lighter about themselves and less anxious?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm sorry to say,
I guess that just really kind of has a way of being unique depending on the person, doesn't it?
Well, definitely it does, and I sort of folded some of my responses just now to the question you just asked me, previously. But yes, sometimes humor will really help break something up and helping them see things in a different light. I mean, believe it or not, using humor, to imagine things that if somebody had an argument with an old friend that just really upset them, and asking them to imagine, if there were cartoon characters, and you'd have to set it up the right way. Explaining it in this context may not really make sense to somebody, but humor and using your creative imagination to help them lighten up on certain things, including cartoon characters and things, does break a pattern. And as I mentioned earlier, reframing some of these trauma memories. Once a trauma is being stored inside of a person, it doesn't go away unless you really work with it. And I speak from personal experience. I had a very traumatic memory when I was a teenager, and through a very bad accident from a horse, and so it takes reframing these things and viewing them from a different perspective. That way, your brain no longer goes back to that original image of, oops, this is what happened, and then the next thing that happened. So that really helps. Also, there's a new process that's not direct hypnosis. It's kind of like a cousin of hypnosis called brain working recursive therapy, BWRT for short. That has been it's been created out of England, and so I am learning that process right now, and it's having immense success with some people, and it will eventually help with depression as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating. I think a lot of times when you get that inner critic, you can actually feel a physiological reaction to it. And it's interesting how it can creep in there so quickly. And if you could, let's do like a little demonstration of how we can fire an inner critic right here.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I really do. And I just love walking people through this kind of stuff. So the way I'm going to do it is as if I was, somebody was here with me. And so I'm going to give, because your audience, when they listen to this, I'm going to give them a few seconds to kind of process some things. And then if they feel like it, they can rewind and listen to it again. But here, I'd like to kind of paint a picture first. We all have some kind of negative voice. Comes and goes. Sometimes it's stronger than others, right? And it begins like a little voice of concern. It starts as a little voice, sometimes almost a whisper. But in time, it ends up finding flaws with everything. And it gets to the point where you become enmeshed in this spiral. Oh, my God, how do I get out of this? Everything's a problem. Everything's a criticism. And then you're thinking, oh, my God, what happened to all those fantastic ideas I had? I had such a great design for this house. I was just going to embark on this other project. It was going to be so cool and all these things. And all of a sudden, you feel like your hopes are dashed. And, hope is a very powerful emotion. And I really like to reinforce it in the world because we all need it. So think about this, Imagine, for example, that you had a great idea you wanted to pitch to somebody, maybe to a team of people, and you're all excited. And all of a sudden, you hear this voice, and it says, you're never going to do it. You're not. You're not going to be able to do that. And you kind of turn around and you go, what, who said that? And then all of a sudden, you keep hearing this voice. It says, well, you never do what you say you're going to do. You're hopeless. And then you go, oh, my God, that voice is inside of me. So that's kind of how I like to paint a little stage here. And if you, as the listener, can just take a couple deep breaths and perhaps sit in a chair. It'd be a lot easier if you were sitting in a chair kind of comfortable, just letting yourself kind of sit back for a moment. Because if you listen to this and practice it on your own a few times, you're getting one of the wonderful things that Neuro-Linguistic programming has brought to the world, which is really teaching people how to anchor really powerful things in their bodies. And just kind of going back to an earlier thread of our discussion, we store emotions in our bodies. We store emotions that aren't always positive, but we can store emotions that are very powerfully positive in our bodies. And when we store those emotions and know where we're storing them, when we touch that place, so examples, when you got married and you're standing at the altar and everything, that whole experience, you probably feel right there in your heart this incredible feeling of joy. That's an anchoring. We call that anchoring. So today what I'm doing briefly is helping you anchor really powerful, positive emotions in your bodies that will override this saboteur called the inner critic. And so as you're taking these breaths, as you're sitting in that chair, hopefully relaxing, feeling some relaxation in your hands, fingers, your knees, etc., I'd like to ask you to close your eyes and find a memory of something you did or something you received, like standing ovation or praise, which made you feel really, really proud. Could be anything. Could be from getting a standing ovation. Could be from finishing a piece of artwork that you've been working on for 2 years. Or it could be your child coming up to you and saying, God, you're the best dad ever. I wouldn't want anyone but you to be my dad or my mom. And could be connected to how you handled an emergency or a crisis. Could be an expertise that you've finally gotten. You actually finally perfected that expertise in your life. So I'd like to just give you several seconds and connect with that memory. Good. Excellent. Now I'd like to ask you to make that feeling of pride much stronger. Focus on how vivid that memory feels to you and really connect with that feeling of pride. That you feel so connected, so your nervous system is firing up those emotions of joy. And let that feeling of pride expand. You can feel it somewhere in your body. I'd like to ask you, what kind of color do you feel it is? Is it a bright color? Is it light? Is it pastel? Now remember, I'm asking you to keep this feeling of pride really vivid and powerful. And does it perhaps have a sound connected to it, like a shout of happiness or song or sound of hands clapping or just a squeal of delight? It's fine if there's no sound. And is there a texture, perchance, associated with this amazing feeling of pride, like silky or smooth or rough texture, or something else, maybe fluffy? You check in with yourself, your subconscious mind, your very creative subconscious mind, giving you all this information. Is there any kind of fragrance connected? Smell of jasmine, for example, or lilac, roses? Fine. Good. I'd like to ask you one more time to really focus powerfully and deeply on that incredible, what I call moment of success that you're connecting with. Everything your imagination has contributed to it, and take that feeling and expand it all the way to fill your entire body, head to toe, and front and back. your whole system, every single part of you feel that amazing feeling of pride. So now you're putting that message of pride, subconsciously speaking, into every single cell in your body. And you're reading it. So it's just as if you've literally written over all those other feelings. And this process can have such a powerful effect on rebooting your self-confidence as you take extra time to be thorough about it. You can practice it anywhere. Home, in your car, right before stepping into a meeting. I'd like to suggest that you really pinpoint that exact place in your body where you originally felt that pride. You can touch that place anytime you need to. It's an anchoring point. It's going to help you access that molecule of emotion, like Dr. Pert would say, of this incredible place, incredible pride. And when I've done this with groups, just like to point this out, the crowd falls silent. Their busy mind shuts down and they just get really quiet. Because that part of yourself is being paid attention to, this wonderful part of yourself. And congratulations for firing your inner critic today.
There you go. That's all it takes. Katie, it's been a pleasure to have you here on the program today, and I'm curious if there is a place where people can go and visit and find out more about your work.
Absolutely. People can always visit my website, innerpathwayhypnosis.com. You're always welcome to email me with any questions, thoughts that they might have regarding anything. If they're interested in connecting with me and setting up an appointment or just asking questions, my email is katie@innerpathwayhypnosis.com.
Well, very good. Katie, thank you so much for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm sure you're probably going to make some very profound changes to a lot of our listeners out there today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And talk to you soon. Look forward to talking to you later. Thank you.
You betcha. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for having the courage to want to change some of those things that you feel that don't serve you. And you can discover how to do some of those by also visiting us at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. Please sign up for our weekly e-newsletter as well. You can also discover more by visiting us at Twitter at beyond50radio.com as well as Facebook. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.